Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the people in the gallery for this Finance Committee meeting on May 5th, 2026. I'd like to start by doing an acknowledgement, and I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we are, is that okay? Okay. In Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we do have regrets today from Councillor DeLong. So we will move on to announcements, acknowledgements, and recognition. And we will start with a proclamation for Gaelic Nova Scotia Month. And we have a treat today. We will be having a double acknowledgement in English and in Gaelic. So we'll start with the mayor to do the English acknowledgement.
It is a pleasure to speak, to give a Gaelic proclamation with a name like Elspeth, which is Gaelic for Elizabeth, for anybody who didn't know that. Anyway, so whereas 2026 marks the 30th anniversary of Gaelic Nova Scotia Month, which is a time to embrace, honor, celebrate, and raise awareness of the language, culture, history, contributions, and achievements of Gaels across the province. And whereas Gaelic language and culture are integral components of the identity of Nova Scotia, and that Gaels represent one of the earliest non-Indigenous cultural groups to settle in Mi'kma'ki, and whereas new generations of language learners and cultural champions continue to build upon the legacy of Gaelic Nova Scotia's tradition bearers, and whereas government commits to collaborating with Gaelic communities to support the growth of Gaelic Nova Scotia through opportunities for language acquisition, cultural awareness, and capacity building within communities, to ensure Gaelic language and culture remain vibrant elements of the living linguistic and cultural landscape of Nova Scotia. Therefore, I, Elspeth McLean-Weil, Mayor of the District of Lunenburg, hereby proclaim May as Gaelic Nova Scotia Month. And I will just, I will, if I might, indulge a little on the Gaelic. When my first trip to Scotland, to trace my family roots, which go back to the late 1700s when they arrived in Pictou. I had some really strange kind of encounters there that made me really feel very connected between Nova Scotia and Scotland. And in subsequent trips to Scotland, I've had the same experience, and I don't know whether it's that kind of mythological connection that we have culturally, but when I go there, and I was there as recently as last summer, I get this strong connection between the traditions that we have here in Nova Scotia and what I have experienced when I've been in Scotland. It may be just in my head, but it does speak to the importance of cultural connections and experiences that help strengthen our understanding of our history and our past.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And now I'll ask our guest, this is Adam Scott. He's coming up to give us an acknowledgement in Gaelic.
Hello. Okay. Hi. Okay, Mata. Yeah, oh yeah, sure. Oh my goodness. She can get my fancy, wow. Okay. Okay. Seach an cóvarich da vile sa fica sa sia an deach gof ceann bliatna iche da vias nan gael a ha na aum gus mawahug a rúsgug mucanan chulter eachtri is art gníven nan gael haar na móróinig is na chóriat ria a glúgal onrachug is a gléig agus seach govel canan is coulter nan gael nan pars voinchach da gain aine na halapanoia is iet na gael chegen a buien cultural neo húsanach na butraia a chuinich an an tír na migama agus seach govel gínalich úra de lúciontachi a chanain agus suin cultural a cumul ora is iet a lentain go dlú ri gílap sienachien na alpa nuaya agus seach gavel, a rialchis an gal a bhí a co-oprachug, le coir sneach gan gaelach, gus taik go hors, de lesachug nan gael an an alpa nuai, ro choramin, gus canan, mawachug, cultural, agus comas na coir sneach go hokal, a gian na keenchach go mad canan, agus cultan an gael, nan parst viarstoch, dan lershin cananoch is cultural a ha bio an an alpa nuai. Mar sin hamisha, Mayor Elspeth McLean-Weil, na agarim a chéitsin da vila sa fixashia, na vias gana gael an Carach district of Lunenburg. Tapalev ula, san akarim a vi a bruna shaw. Tapalev.
Thank you for that. It's a beautiful, beautiful lilting language. So thank you for starting our meeting off with that. All right, we have a second proclamation for today. So I will turn it over to Mayor Elspeth McLean-Weil for Environmental Sensitivities and Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Awareness Day.
Whereas May is Environmental Sensitivities Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Awareness Month, with May 12, 2026 recognized as Environmental Sensitivities Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Awareness Day, and whereas the Canadian Human Rights Commission recognizes environmental sensitivities, including multiple chemical sensitivity, where symptoms can range from mild to severely debilitating and can substantially limit function and significantly impact quality of life. And whereas it is estimated that more than 1 million people in Canada have been diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivity, and a subset of these individuals have been identified as experiencing electromagnetic hypersensitivity, and whereas to achieve a better quality of life, individuals with environmental sensitivities, multiple chemical sensitivity require access to safe housing and appropriate health care, and whereas community efforts by organizations and individuals raise awareness, offer hope, and support research through advocacy and fundraising. Therefore, I, Mayor Elspeth McLean-Weil, hereby proclaim May as Environmental Sensitivities Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Awareness Month, with May 12, 2026 recognized as Environmental Sensitivities Multiple Chemical Sensitivity Awareness Day.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements, acknowledgements, or recognition? Okay, Councillor Bell.
Good morning. While we can't do a proclamation for every topic, I do want to mention that today is Red Dress Day, recognizing missing and murdered Indigenous women, and it is also a very important day that should be recognized.
Yep, thank you for bringing that to the meeting. Are there any other announcements or acknowledgements before we move on to the next part of the meeting? And I'm not seeing any, so we will move on. The next portion of the meeting is reserved for public input. I did speak to everyone in the gallery, and I don't believe anyone wishes to speak for public input today, but I'll just confirm that. No one for public input? Okay. Okay, so we will move on to changes and approval of the agenda. So the agenda was circulated. I haven't heard of any changes, so I'll ask someone to put a motion to approve the agenda, moved by Mayor McLean-Weil and seconded by Councillor Bell. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion is passed unanimously. Next is approval of the minutes from the last Finance Committee meeting of April 7th, 2026. Those have been circulated. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, I will approve the minutes as circulated. Next, we have business arising from the minutes, and I will check with our Deputy CAO. And there is no business arising from the minutes. So we can move on. We're moving right along today. The next step is presentations, and I'm very excited to hear from our presenter today. We have Crystal Trull, who is an RN and the South Shore Flora's Walk leader. And she'll be telling us a bit about Flora's Walk, which is happening this Saturday.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Mayor and Council. I would also like to acknowledge that I'm of English and Scottish descent, which is timely for this month. And for several generations, my ancestors have lived on Indigenous lands from Florida to Ontario, and my ancestors from Scotland came to the Hudson Bay area and ran the fur trade there. But now my family lives in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq, and in a small village called Auburndale, under District 3 with Pam Hubley. And as a public health nurse, I travel the extent of Lunenburg and Queens County. I'd also like to proclaim that it's World Maternal Mental Health Day. I didn't realize we could make those proclamations. And in a few days, on May 9th, I will be leading a fundraising walk in Bijinuizga Park called Flora's Walk. Flora's Walk is Canada's largest perinatal mental health fundraiser. And my speech is a bit different from what I sent you, so just don't follow along there. Flora's Walk takes place in over 50 towns and cities across Canada. It is named after a Canadian mother who tragically lost her life in 2022 to undetected and undiagnosed perinatal mental illness. I'm not sharing her last name or her location because of the privacy that we're protecting for the daughter she left behind. Flora's Walk is led by the organization Life with a Baby out of Ontario, and funds are collected under the registered charity Canada Helps. 30% of the funds raised go toward national peer support programs, and 70% return back to the community for local initiatives. It has been shown that support from a birth professional during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum leads to developing a trusting and continuity of care within that time, and leading to mental and emotional well-being. That is why this year, our funds as a province, we're pooling together to put toward the Doula Access Fund, where families can apply and access those funds to receive one-on-one doula care in the postpartum. So why am I here today? Well, I came to garner support for Flora's Walk to provide some education and awareness for perinatal mental health, and possibly on adventures in the future. So perinatal mental illness is the most common complication of pregnancy and postpartum. I just want that to settle in a little bit, because we all know about gestational diabetes, we all know about high blood pressure. The rate of that is about 6%. Perinatal mental health conditions occur 20% and higher. And I think because we're not asking much about it, we're not actually capturing the full extent of the occurrence. The spectrum of mental illness incurred includes a mood or anxiety disorder that is brought on by the biological, psychological, environmental, and social changes that occur during pregnancy and the first years postpartum. Pre-existing mental illness is also exacerbated during that time. So research shows that those with bipolar disorder or have a strong family history of bipolar disorder are at highest risk for something called postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis and severe depression are the conditions that pose the highest risk for maternal death in the early days postpartum. Infanticide is the other rare yet fatal outcome during times of perinatal psychosis or acute agitation. Think shaken baby syndrome. Aside from the morbid outcomes, Wealthy countries like Canada, and including Canada, report, like I said, a 20% rate of perinatal mental illness, ranging from mild to severe. Perinatal mental illness left untreated has the potential to interfere with bonding and attachment in the infant, placing them at risk for altered growth and development. The UK government studied treated versus untreated perinatal mental illness and found that untreated perinatal mental illness costs the healthcare system $150,000 more per mother and child pair than the treated counterparts. Much research has been shown that has identified barriers to treating perinatal mental illness, and both parent and care provider barriers have been identified. And they essentially center around stigma, fear, and shame if societal norms of parenthood are not met. This increases isolation when struggling with perinatal mental illness and compounds the effects on the parent and the child. Advocacy, education, awareness, challenge stigma, normalize common struggles, and remove barriers to receiving support. And this is where I'd like to share my story. After trying to get pregnant unsuccessfully for several years and 2 rounds of IVF, I gave birth to our daughter in 2019. 3 years later, after struggling with anxiety, starting infertility treatment, I finally received a diagnosis and treatment, but not until I advocated for myself. Once my health improved and we surfaced from the intense care and well-being of our newborn, I realized there was an easy solution that could be provided to new parents, and I decided to do it myself. I'm a registered nurse, and I knew I had the ability to make a difference for other women with perinatal mental illness. So I combined my nursing education, my experience in obstetrics, my lived experience, coursework in advanced perinatal mental health. I worked with colleagues and drew on existing examples to develop and implement a quality initiative for perinatal mental health. And it involved telephone support, strictly telephone support, one-on-one with parents. I ran the initiative between 2022 and 25, introducing care provider education, a new care pathway, online resources, and one-on-one support for parents here on the South Shore. I've presented my successes at provincial and national conferences, and 2 of those successes being that 80% reduction in symptoms and decreased wait times to psychiatry. In 2025, the program ended, but not after it identified a great need, and a provincial review commenced. It does not escape me that the same year Flora died, I received help, and she did not lose her life in vain. Flora's Walk is not only a chance to honor parents who have lost their lives to perinatal mental illness, but to offer community and hope for those who continue to struggle. It is my hope that we might all talk a bit more about perinatal mental health and make it easier to get help. At our walk this year, we will hear from Councillor Morgan Reinhardt and a doula, Taylor Perouche, as they speak of their own experiences and offer their support for the cause. We will walk through the streets of Bridgewater and back at the park, where we'll give away some door prizes that have been donated by local businesses. And it's meant to celebrate community. I want to end with reflection on the recent news of the Yarmouth mother who is now serving a 6-year sentence for the death of her 17-month-old son. And hopefully you all are familiar with that story. When I saw this story, I did not get angry or judgmental at the mom. Instead, I saw a mother who wasn't being adequately supported through major life stressors, particularly in the postpartum. The news article articulates the systematic societal violence against this mom throughout her life that played a key role in isolating her and neglecting her safety. The final scenario of changing a diaper on an unconsolable child was impossible to cope with. I felt all too close to this exact scenario as a parent, and so have so many others I've talked to. The only difference being that those thoughts stayed in our heads and did not come out as actions. So what's the difference between us? Well, we had support, those of us that did not act on those thoughts. We had an involved co-parent. We had supportive grandparents. We moved through life relatively with ease otherwise. Our impulses and thoughts stayed in our heads. This is psychologically impossible for someone who is not buffered by a supportive community and family. Yes, healthcare provides important interventions, but some of the most effective and life-saving interventions are kindness, care, and looking after our neighbors, family, and community members. Given the dire consequences if perinatal mental illness goes undetected and untreated, and the recent loss in our neighboring community, I urge Council to consider the following. So as it stands, rates of perinatal anxiety alone, not including depression on the South Shore, were 40% in 2023 from a provincial database. The highest in the province and exceeding national averages. Specialized perinatal mental health care in this province is centralized in Halifax. It is one of the only, one of a few, or if not the only, mental health service without satellite programs in rural communities. If I need someone to talk to right now, who is there? Am I sick enough for mental health and addictions services? Are there peer supports in the community? I have proven a concept of care in the quality initiative I ran. I continue to advocate, educate, and raise awareness as I stand here in front of you today and lead Flora's Walk. I realize government moves slowly and policy comes from the top, and at the same time, I know this is an immediate and desperate need. I have gone as far as I can as a frontline nurse, a community member, and mother. I'm not a systems person. I'm not a government person. I'm quite politically illiterate. So I'm here to ask for your support from the municipality in person at Flora's Walk, if you can, and beyond, and to ask, what can you do? Because I don't know what you can do, what powers you have. If there's room to be a champion for this, this topic at other political conversations, other provincial conversations. And so that's what I'm posing to you is, what can you do? Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Before I say anything, I'll just see if there are any comments or questions from any other councillors. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. I just want to say that I struggled with perinatal mental illness when it wasn't recognized. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I will see you Saturday.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think some of the things that you've offered here are quite not shocking. Mm-hmm. I think for anybody who's had kids living in this area, sometimes the lack of supports and the isolation can be a lot. I don't want to suggest that there are no supports because, you know, it is good to value the ones that we have. And I was just thinking of years ago when my kids were young, I helped coordinate a peer support line for breastfeeding mothers. And at the time, it was, there was a lot of stigma still around breastfeeding in public, even breastfeeding, you know, in front of your family. And that stigma was something that new mothers really struggled with. But the thing that we found in coordinating that line and matching up mothers was that it went way beyond the stigma around breastfeeding and really, you know, what you're saying about just not living up to societal norms as a mother, it's just really, really hard to cope with. And even people who don't get down the road of very extreme perinatal mental illness, it's still a struggle. So I would like to be part of any way that we can support your work, because I think it's really, really important that we get more of these services down here. That there's no satellite site is really kind of upsetting. And I'm not sure if we could discuss later, maybe whether we could write a letter of support. I would certainly be in favor of that, and I'll see you at the walk as well.
That's great. Thank you. And I think where it can start is providing factual information and starting. The thing that I have the most problem with is the term baby blues, because it's a misnomer. It doesn't totally capture the full extent of those first couple weeks postpartum, and it's often confused with postpartum depression and can be downplayed. So yeah, I'm certainly, if you guys want content for like actual evidence, I'm very happy to provide that for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. I wondered if you could just speak to the event on Saturday, time, location, for anybody who might be listening right now or views our recording this week, so that they have that information.
Yeah, so it's in Beegee-Newisga Park. It's the park downtown Bridgewater. That used to be the parking lot. It's down on the water. And it's starting at 11 a.m. and runs till 2. We're going to have some speeches at the beginning of the walk at 11. There will be some refreshments, some coffee and tea donated by local Dougal Tea and Coffee. We're going to walk down King Street, over the new bridge, back down LaHave Street, over the old bridge, and back to the park. And then we'll give away some door prizes.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
Thank you, Crystal, for your presentation. I guess my curiosity about the program that you led, organized and led into 2025, and then it stopped. Clearly, there was a funding that supported it, and then it didn't. Can you speak to where it is in terms of evaluation of continuation?
The short answer is no, because I'm a frontline nurse, and I'm not involved, and I haven't been invited to be involved in the leadership discussions about funding or the provincial review. It is on the mental health. I think it's the IW. I'm trying to remember what site it is. Jennifer Wielden is the Western Zone Director of Mental Health and Addictions, and she is leading that review, and she is the contact person for that.
You don't have any idea of the time frame?
No.
No.
No. If and when.
And was it just established as a pilot?
Yeah.
And then it's...
I honestly, and that's part of my drive to continue to advocate, because so often communication doesn't happen in a two-way manner, especially from leadership down. So I'm just trying to do my best from the ground.
Well, I appreciate that, and next week I will be meeting with our MLA, Becky Druin, and I will raise this with her, so I'll get a little more background from you over the next few days to prepare for that meeting.
Thank you.
I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'll add my sincere thanks to you for coming in.
Thank you.
And sharing this information. I think you're exactly right. It's something that is not talked about enough, and that just compounds the cycles of isolation and shame that mothers sometimes get trapped in. So I really appreciate it. I felt that same isolation myself, and knowing that you are using a lot of the money to go towards a doula access fund, I think is just an incredible idea. that's a great way to put funds to good ground support. So I think that's excellent, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is correspondence. We do not have any correspondence for this meeting. So we will move on to staff reports. And we have one today, a staff report from the Finance Department on Center School. And we are, I'll ask Elena Wenzel, our Director of Finance, to present that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Mayor and Council. So in preparation for the potential demolition of Center School, which is on your capital plan this year, the Engineering Department contracted Strum Engineering to perform an environmental assessment with costing options for budgeting and accounting purposes. This report presented two options for site remediation once the building's demolished and hazardous materials are removed. Staff are recommending option 2, which is risk assessment and risk management, which is on page 4 of the Strum report that we enclosed with the memorandum. Option 1 of the report was to remediate the site to Tier 1 levels, which isn't recommended for this site as we are going to be using it as a brownfield. On May 14th, 2025, a letter from the Nova Scotia Department of Environment and Climate Change was received identifying the property as a contaminated site, which also outlined the obligations to achieve compliance under the Environment Act and contaminated site regulations. So public sector accounting rules dictate that if all conditions are met, a liability for remediation of a contaminated site must be recognized and presented as a financial liability in our statement of financial position. Those recognition requirements per PSAB 3260 include a liability for remediation of contaminated sites should be recognized when, as at the financial reporting date, which would be March 31st, 2026, an environmental standard exists, the contamination exceeds the environmental standard, the government is directly responsible or accepts responsibility, it is expected that future economic benefits will be given up, and a reasonable estimate of the amount can be made. The Strum report gives an estimated cost, and the letter from the province identifies the environmental standards which have been exceeded. The municipality was forced to take this ownership of this site and is now responsible for remediation of the site contamination. Since the site cannot be used until the building is demolished, hazardous materials are removed and the site's remediated, future economic benefits from the site have been given up. Based on this information, staff determined that a liability for the contaminated site must be reported on our March 31st, 2026 financial statements. The cost estimate of option 2 is $216,500 plus or minus 20%. So staff thought it would be reasonable to record a liability of $250,000, which we'll report on our March 31st, 2026 statements. This wasn't a budgeted item and it will not be funded. The liability is set up to inform readers of our financial statements that the contaminated site exists. It's important to note there's also an asset retirement obligation set up for a Center School because of the asbestos that was found in that school in previous environmental assessments. This actually is a funded obligation, which we use municipal reserves for, and that's valued at $871,675 on March 31st, 2025. We will increase that by Nova Scotia CPI as per the accounting standard for AROs. So this information has been given to Council and an explanation of accounting obligations, so you won't be surprised when you see it in the March 31st, 2026 financial statements.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Mayor McLean-Weil?
It may be just, I'm sure it's just my ignorance, but can you explain to me the relationship between the $871,000 and the cost that we have estimated for the remediation work?
Certainly. So it's kind of an interesting thing. The asset retirement obligation is a legal requirement under the public sector accounting standards that say if there's any legal requirement to remove any hazardous material, you have to determine what that material is and the cost to remove it. So a few years ago when we put that accounting standard in place, we had an environmental assessment of all of our facilities, and they found asbestos, so we just used a rate that was local for tipping fees and what it would cost to take the asbestos itself out. So that was a significant amount of money. The other part is that you do have in your capital budget monies to demolish the building, which is in the millions of dollars. However, just for the site remediation part, just that part of what's left that could be hazardous, based on the assessment that they've made, that's where we get the 250-ish thousand from. It's just whatever's kind of left that might have to be, maybe it's contaminated soil or other hazardous materials that don't really have a legal obligation attached to them, but we're still obligated to remediate them in such a way, as well as site monitoring to make sure the groundwater is okay. So that's where that 250 comes from. It's just, I know they're
I understood the
pieces.
250, it was the 871, so that's really captured in the total cost of the demolition of the project. It is part of that work. You pulled out the asbestos literally and put a price tag on its removal.
That's correct.
And it's captured in the total cost. Thank
Yes.
you.
Councillor Smith.
Is it okay for me to ask a couple of questions about this project and not the liability itself? I'm just wondering, as far as the brownfield goes, what can that be used for afterwards, after we do option 2, and also what's the cost going forward for the monitoring of the site? And then my third question is, can you sell a site that is that you're doing active environmental monitoring on?
Okay, so Stephen Pace is going to answer some of those.
I may need a reminder of some of the questions further on, but generally we've looked at option 2, which is leaving as a brownfield. And one of the factors that differentiate from option 1 is potable water. If you achieve, and we've done both in the past, and in the case of the former Riverport School, we did achieve potable water, a tier 1 status, which allows us to have potable water. That project was very well funded through other levels of government. We had 73% funding, and we were under budget, and we really wanted to have that site usable for other purposes. In the case of the Mark, we have some contamination that went under a building. So what we did in that case is did some groundwater monitoring around the area and designated it that it didn't migrate, and that's what we're proposing for Center School. And that it's a lot. I think the cost estimates were about $700,000 more to achieve tier 1, which would give us ability to have potable water. We do have potable water access in that area on the adjoining property where the soccer fields are. So if we do need down the road, potable water, that would be an avenue we could get it done. But part of the project will be to monitor the groundwater in that area of this identified contaminations. So for the cost benefit, particularly knowing the site, the project isn't, we have no other levels of funding. It's a fairly steep bill to achieve. The future of the property we see as a brownfield, good for more passive recreation purposes. And as far as selling the property, I think we see it as a long-term asset of the MODL. And any purchaser would have to be able to finance it. It would become a financing issue for any purchaser, but I think we see it as a long-term asset of the municipality.
And sorry, just the question about so we're monitoring the Mark site as well for environmental.
Yeah, there was an underground oil tank there that was removed, but there is still some impacted soils. So there was a groundwater monitoring program over a period of time. And it was, so once that's been done for a period of time, it's proven not to migrate beyond that certain location. And that's all filed with the Department of Environment. And there's no future monitoring required after that time.
Does that,
So, yeah.
one more question?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. So the monitoring only lasts for a period of time and then it's done.
Yeah, typically you want to capture all 4 seasons and as a minimum. And that's done in Strum Consulting, provided the site professional oversight of that project as well. And that was a number of years ago. So that's our approach with this site at Center School.
Okay, thank you for clarifying those. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, I am not seeing any, which brings us to the end of our meeting. Seeing nothing else on the agenda, I will declare the meeting adjourned.